A very important meeting tonight. If you're in real estate, this is one subject, one thing that you really need to have a handle on, and you need to know who to call. So, before we get to that point, hey Carl, I just want to take a couple of minutes here and clarify. At our barbecue, I mentioned lease options were brought up, and I mentioned sandwich lease options, and there were a lot of questions, and I've had a lot of questions, phone calls since then. So I just want to take 5 minutes. This is not a class on sandwich lease options. Maybe at some point we will teach on that, but there were some questions on how do you set it up. By the way, I do use 2 contracts, and a separate lease contract and a separate option contract. And so the question that I got most was, how do you close on this sort of thing? So I put together, just for illustration's sake, some numbers, okay? And here's how you close on a sandwich lease option. At 10 a.m., thank you, that's bigger, yeah, that's better. 10 a.m., the tenant buyer, the end user, shows up to buy from us in room 1. The tenant buyer has the cash to fund the close. And you see the numbers there. He's buying it for $111,000. And again, this is all illustration's sake, just so that I can explain it. And you see how that works. He paid $5,000 for the option consideration, so at closing, he's actually paying out $106,000. So at 10:15, the seller to us shows up in room 2 for their close. My contract price was $85,000. I only paid a $1,000 option consideration, so I owed the original seller $84,000. Okay? So is that making kind of sense as far as the closing? That's how you close. You use 2 contracts, 2 separate contracts, one for the lease, one for the option consideration, and then when you set up a close, and by the way, not every title company will do this. Just be aware of that. You need to have a title company that will do a double close, knows what a double close is, or will close in 2 separate rooms like that. Okay? So that's basically how that works. I have one more page, Carl. How do I get that up?
Should be able to fit back.
I'm glad we got the tech person. Me and technology, I'm about to drive my secretary crazy with telling her what I want done and stuff, and she's saying, well, I don't know if you can do that, Dave, on the computer. But anyway, so this is, in a nutshell, how it all arrives. 10 a.m., tenant buyer arrives, brings $106,000 in certified funds. At 10:15, the seller arrives, the original seller, and has the deed. It is paid for. The seller signs, and they get, you see the amount up there and how we came to that amount. I walk away with a $22,000 check plus the $5,000 option consideration. And by the way, when you set that up, the option consideration is non-refundable, period. And the reason I say that is because you're not interested in renters. You will have people at the end of that 2-year, and by the way, I set it up as a 5-year original for me and a 2-year on the backside, because if it doesn't work through, I've got 3 more years to get it worked out before my option consideration is to its end. So you always set the option consideration up as non-refundable. I want all my money back up front if it doesn't work out. I'll tell you right up front, I double dip. I set it up that way. On the backside, it's non-refundable. And the reason I do that is strictly business. I am not interested in renters. If you give them the option, they will walk every time and ask for it back. So, anyway, that's a pretty good chunk of change, isn't it? Ended up with $27,000. So, and that's not too far out either. So, and then 1045, the deed number 1 from the seller to us is recorded, and then 1050, the second deed is done. So that in a nutshell, I hope that clarifies some of the questions and answers I've been getting. So yes, one more.
What title company do you use?
Stewart Title. So, okay. Now, okay, we're done with that part. How many new people do we have here tonight? Yeah, keep your hands up. Awesome. Okay, great. I have gotten... Did I talk to anybody on the phone this week? I'm supposed to meet 2 guys here tonight.
Yeah, David.
Oh, pleasure to meet you, buddy.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, great. You know, one of the perks of what I get to do is to meet people who are just coming into real estate and that get the phone calls and talk to them and hear the excitement, hear the enthusiasm that they have, and be able to share with them and talk with them about all the possibilities, what they want to do. So it's fantastic. Thank you guys for coming tonight. Let's give them a round of applause, all right? Okay. Anybody done their first deal? Got a first deal cooking? Nobody? All right, we'll keep working on it. I would like, Beth, would you come up, please?
No.
I tell you what, yeah, give her Beth a round of applause. I tell you, one of the perks of being a member and knowing about KCIG is that everybody here is interested in real estate. And we've got not only this meeting, but several other things that go on throughout the month. And I'm going to let Beth tell you about one that involves a Saturday.
So the first Saturday of every month from 10 until noon at Panera in Westport, we get together and it really is just like a one-on-one talking. So it's where this is more somebody standing up here, you know, teaching you. This is you can ask questions about anything you want. And we're there just to answer questions. So feel free to come on out, and it's actually very interesting.
There's no set agenda, is there?
No.
You can ask anything related to real estate. Would it be okay if I come this time?
Anytime you want to come, you can come.
I don't always get to make it. It's the first Saturday, but I don't always get to make it. I tell you what, I will, to reiterate what she said, I enjoy the daylights out there. I mean, it's just interesting sitting there talking about real estate. Whatever subject comes up, that's what we talk about. And it's just a great time to really get knowledge, to let somebody know that you're out there doing real estate and that kind of thing. So thank you very much, Beth. All right. It's my privilege to introduce our speaker for tonight. And I first heard him several years ago. Yes?
Before you bring it up, I want to say something. After you.
Oh, you want to do it now?
Yeah.
Okay. I give you permission.
Thank you.
Cindy is my VP, and we tease each other a lot. She has a great sense of humor, but not as good as mine. But
Yes, I am. I'm more of a smarty pants than you. All right. What I wanted to say. I'm not getting for many years, for about 14 years, I've been with investors. About 12 years ago, I had an investor looking at a property in a pocket area in Kansas City. And he went in, and it was a 2-story older home. The floors were washboarding. So most people were walking away from it. They're afraid. He brought in, I believe, Bob Quick. And what happened, whoever had done the supports in the basement recently did it wrong. So he took it down, I believe, a half a turn over a period of time, periodically. The floors flattened back out. So my point is, so many times, a structural engineer can be a great benefit to you because so many houses that people are afraid of doesn't mean that they should be afraid of them. So the cost of bringing in an expert engineer is fantastic, okay? I mean, It's great. So, can I go ahead and introduce him?
Let me say one more thing.
No.
You can introduce.
You know who Wayne Gretzky is?
Uh-uh.
Yeah.
The great one. Yes. He's one of the greatest hockey players. I'm not a hockey follower, that type of thing, but he's one of the greatest hockey players from what I've read of all time. In an interview, the interviewer asked him, what separates you from everybody else? And there is, get this, this is not just time and space filler here. This really has a meaning to it. What separates you from everybody else? And if you're not asking yourself that question, you need to be. His answer was this. Most all the other players look at where the puck is. I look at where it's going. Now, in real estate, that's huge. If you're looking at where the real estate market is and trying to cash in on where it is right now, you might do okay. You might not. It's iffy. But if you're looking at where the real estate market is going, and you set yourself up, you see, because where he was watching where the puck was going, he was already in position to score. That's what made him so great. And as a real estate investor, if you're not setting yourself up to score, to close, it's changed now, isn't it? To close on the property, you're setting yourself up for failure. So there's homework to be done, people to talk to, there's knowledge to be gained to make yourself aware of where the market is headed so that you can set yourself up for success. Because that's what it's all about. So, and as a real estate investor, we buy as is, how is, and where is. And I hope you know what all three of those mean, because they're all three refer to something different. And if you don't, come and ask me later and I'll tell you. And with that being said, we look at all kinds of houses, don't we? The more beat up, the better. So the very first, not the very first, but one of the first houses I looked at, I walked down the basement and one of the walls was like this. Told my partner, said nothing doing it, walked out. That's when you need somebody you can call. I should have bought the house because I went back, somebody did buy it, fixed it, did their thing, straightened the wall, sold it, and made a song. I followed all the numbers. I went back and checked everything. I should have been all over that, but I was afraid of it because I didn't know, and I didn't know Bob at the time. So, with that being said, introduce our speaker.
Okay. And with the other thing that they will do, I mean, Bob does, and I'm sure he'll tell you, if there's a foundation problem, they're going to tell you how to fix it and the approximate cost. All right, then you've got an expert. A basement person is not an engineer. Okay, I'm not dogging them, but they're not engineers. So anyway, I know you all are looking forward to this. I will shut up. Please help me welcome Bob Quick with Royal Engineering.
If I'm gonna run my car, I guess I gotta be back there. What's that? All right, yeah, my name is Bob Quick. I'm with Royal Engineering. I am Royal Engineering, I guess. I've been doing this 30 plus years. So I've looked at a lot of houses over the years. For me, it's pretty easy to just drive up to a house and I can pretty much tell you what's wrong with it. I know when you haven't done it for 30-some years, it's a little tougher. So what I'm going to do here first is just try and show you some things that you can look for when you walk into a house, things that you need to be aware of where there is a real problem, and try and show you the difference between things that are a problem and things that are not. and then just try and answer questions for you for a while. Can you show me how to do this? I don't have my glasses on. I just press it over.
This is the arrow key.
Arrow key. Oh, not that one. That one, okay. I'll start out, this is a real typical house. Everybody sees small house, 4 concrete walls, or 4 concrete block walls. Walk up to it, it's all deep basement. The odds of having settlement are pretty slim. All these houses, when you see them, the flat grade and stuff, most of them, if they have a structural problem, it's lateral movement. A split level house. You've got the potential, you've got the grade coming from the back side. On the back side, you usually have damage, it's lateral movement. That's the walls being pushed in from water and freezing and stuff like that. On the shallow side over here, you're more apt to have settlement. That's from the dry weather. The soil shrink up, it gets underneath the shallow part of the foundation, and down it goes. 10 years ago or 12 years ago, the last time I was here, there were very few houses in Kansas City that had settlement. We have had such dry weather since then. I don't go into a house anymore that I don't see signs of at least some settlement in the houses. So, but you can live with a certain amount of it. But same thing on this with a walkout basement. You're worried about the settlement on the back side. Okay. When I walk up to a house, like the first house, the first place I go is the corner. If you see a crack in the corner, 6 to 8 inches from the corner, one way or another, it means either this wall or the wall on this side has lateral movement, or possibly both. So if it's completely finished inside, you know that it has movement. And if this crack is as wide as this one is, it has a lot of movement. So even if it's finished and you can't see another thing, you know this wall is going to need some kind of bracing, and it's got cracks that need to be patched. When I look at the corner, then I walk around the side of the house. A lot of you have probably seen this. This is where the I-beam pocket sits in the wall. When that wall moves in, people say, oh, the concrete's jumping out. It's not. This concrete's exactly where it was originally. The wall has moved in and the I-beam has held it there. So that means that wall is moving in. And based on how much this is offset, it's usually about how much the wall has moved. Whenever you see the brick, walk up and see the brick separated from the concrete, that can be a simple problem with the siding. The bricks fail, but 95% of the time there's been settlement in that area, and when the wall rolled out, the brick separates. So this is a problem you need to really check. If you have separation around every window and the corners of the house has a lot of settlement, you want to really make sure you get that checked. On this situation, another house with brick, there was no crack. I don't think it's not the best picture in the world. That's my toe, my shoes, stuck back underneath the brick. Another way you can look at a house, on the ends, when they have lateral movement, the ends don't move. There's another wall there to stop it. But the middle of the wall starts moving in. So if you look, and the brick's overhung a ½ inch, or it's perfect with the concrete, which it is a lot of times, on the corner, it should be that way in the middle. If it's moved in like this a couple inches, that means that wall's moving out from underneath the brick, and it's moving out from underneath the house and getting pushed in again. That's the same kind of thing. If you've got cracks that big, you've really got some serious settlement problems. On concrete walls, and then this is a concrete block wall. If you all have done a lot of investing, you'll see this crack here about midpoint of the wall runs the length of the wall. That's going to be in almost every concrete block house you look at that's built in the 50s. That is, again, lateral movement. This is the type of crack you get in concrete block versus concrete, which I'll go through in a minute. That horizontal crack, and it goes in, this does require bracing. These become very weak. There's a lot of concrete block homes that the concrete block has no steel in it. It was built without steel. And so you have to add the reinforcing on the outside to hold it in place. This is the concrete wall. versus concrete block, the same lateral movement that causes that horizontal crack in concrete block will cause this angular crack on the end of the wall. When you see this, there's going to be another crack on the other end of the wall angling back the other way. So if it's a half-finished basement and you see this crack, you know there's a crack under that finished part on the other side. And you just can't get one crack. I've never...
Same wall or opposite ends?
Same wall, opposite ends. There'll be two cracks. And so you know there's another crack in there. This is lateral movement. This is what I expect to see in a concrete wall when I see that vertical crack on the outside corner. The horizontal crack in the block is what I expect to see when I see that vertical crack. Again, here that's the same thing. It's just leaking water, which the one thing about these, when you get the angular crack, they generally do not go all the way through the wall if you catch it early. If you get it in the first inch of movement and you get it braced, that crack doesn't go through the wall, so it shouldn't really leak at all. If it's leaking, that wall's been pushed in a huge amount because it's finally broke all the way through the wall. Okay. Going up into the house. Cracks above the windows, doors, everything like that. When you see that in the sheetrock, those are very possibly settlement. Okay? If the house has lateral movement and the foundation moves out from underneath it, it doesn't stress the house at all. And so you'll see no cracks. You can have a lot of lateral movement, no cracks. Once you get settlement, a portion of the house dropping down, it stresses the sheetrock and it will crack. One crack like this, probably not a problem. It could be somebody just bumped into the door. When you start seeing a pattern of cracks in the house, they will all point going up towards the settlement. So if you have one corner, if that corner of this building was settling, I could look at that door and I'd see cracks pointing up this way. I'd look at these windows and see cracks pointing up this way. There might be one down from the window over here. I see those cracks, the bigger they are, the more settlement you know there is. If the whole back of the house is settling, all the cracks in the house will point towards the back. So that lets you know what area and lets you pretty much judge how much area has settlement based on these type of cracks. The other thing you'll see, and this is most of the time in a garage, the separation between the wall and the floor. You'll see it in the basement also. This is settlement. Okay? Those are normally poured right against the wall. When that wall settles, it's setting up, the footing underneath it is setting flat, and the wall is setting on the foundation. The outside settles more than the inside because of the dry weather. The wall rolls out, and that's what creates this gap in the floor. So if you see that in a garage, if it's an attached garage and there's no living space above it, you can probably live with it like that. If it's in the basement, you need to go upstairs and start looking for the other cracks that are above the doors and stuff, because that is something that you're going to need to address at some point. Cracks in the floor. I get this all the time. 95% of cracks in the floor, no problem at all. Okay? If they're really offset, there may be some heaving. The floor is moving, but again, that is not a structural problem if the basement floor moves up or down. That's supposed to move up or down. That's why it's poured separate. If it's too much, it just becomes a hazard for your eyes. But the other way that you can see a crack in the floor that would be a problem is if it's a nice thick crack and it runs along the wall 2 or 3 feet from the wall the entire way. That is usually caused from the settlement and snapping of the slab. So most of the times, these are not a problem. If you see those and you don't see any cracks upstairs or in the sheetrock or any separation in the concrete, the cracks in the floor are not a problem. All right. Going into just trying to explain. That was some of the things you need to look for. This is the frost and the water loading pushing on the wall, causing it to bow. This type of bowing you would get in a block wall. That's not the type of cracking you get, so I don't know why they got that. You would get the horizontal crack in the block wall, but the concrete wall will always lean from the top. Bracing of the walls is the best way to prevent lateral movement, both in concrete block and concrete walls. This shows an 8 by 18 beam, which is way too big. Most of the time, and almost every contractor I know around here uses a 4 by 7.7 I-beam, which is plenty for a regular sized basement. If the basement's extra tall, you still go to a 4 by 9.6. You never have to put these in. And I've seen prices range for these, which I deal with all the foundation companies, anywhere from $250 to $500 a beam. So there is a big price difference in there. You want to make sure and get somebody, most of you probably have somebody you use all the time, but that would be good. Okay. Water. When you see water in a basement, water itself is not a structural problem. If we have a big heavy rain and the water table comes up, you'll get water leaking around the bottom of the floor. That's not a structural problem of the house. Water can create a structural problem, but just because there's water there doesn't mean there's a structural problem. And if there is a structural problem and you repair it doesn't mean that the house won't get water in the future. Okay? Water is a totally separate item from the structure. Okay? I find that all the time. People will call me up, hey, it rained 6 inches the other night and we got water in our basement. Can you come and tell us if we're structurally sound? Not a crack in the foundation. It just come up from underneath.
I wanted to ask about that last slide. How many beams would you need like that in there?
Okay, on the beams, a lot of you get in there. If you've got concrete block walls, the typical is every 4 feet. Concrete, if it's a limited amount of movement, you can do them up to every 8 feet. A lot of people like to do them every 6 feet. If you have a lot of movement on a concrete wall, you need to do it every 4 feet there also. And again, when you have the foundation problems, every place now seems to have some kind of foundation problem. If you can live with them, if you're buying to rent, there are a lot of foundation problems that do not have to be taken care of immediately. They can last for a long time if you maintain the property properly. Here, the grate does not slope away, so water sits around the foundation. That's going to cause a big problem for your house. You have to have that slope away, but the other thing that you have to have is you have to have enough moisture to keep this ground in here from shrinking up. So in dry weather, you have to water your foundation. If you do those things, you can take a foundation that's had an inch of settlement or an inch and a half of settlement, it's leaned in an inch, and maintain it at that level for 5-10 years before you ever have to do anything. So if you rent it out, you collect your rent for a few years, then you can do the improvements.
On watering your foundation, how much would you need to do? Like last summer was really dry. And instead of watering my lawn, I turned the sprinkler toward the house. And how much water and how far out should you water to make sure that...
The best way to look at it, I don't want to tell you this many minutes or this much water a day, because it all changes depending on the weather. What you want to do is water enough that water isn't running off, so you need to water every day when we have the dry weather. But you have to just water enough that you're not getting any cracks in about the first 6 feet of the foundation from the house. So I know a couple years ago when we had it, people who weren't watering, there were cracks in their yard, 2-3 inches wide. And the soil, when you walked up to the house, was pulled away from the foundation 2 inches. Those were houses were a little too late. But if you water that every day and keep that, up against the house, you don't want to put too much water, but you're better off to do that than to go without the water.
The key is to stay ahead of it.
Staying ahead of it. That is by far the key, staying ahead of it to maintain that.
I was told once, because our house has foundation issues, to keep like a hose maybe a foot away, like a soaker hose, just turn it on every night, or just let it soak it over.
Right, and that's, if people say, say, will that work? I'll say, yes, that'll work. But how long you keep the soaker hose on, go out and check it and make sure that you're not getting any cracks. If you're doing that every day for 5 minutes, often that's enough. A lot of times, 5 minutes, 3 times a day is not enough.
I like do it overnight, every maybe 3 days or something. Is that?
Yeah. You'd be better off to buy yourself a timer and have it go on every day for a shorter period of time. Because if you do it overnight, the first part of the water is going in, the rest of it's just flowing off somewhere else, and you're watering somebody else's yard. Most houses are built with drain tiles around the bottom to try and help get rid of the water. Most of the houses you all are buying, these are not working anymore, so don't expect that to be, you know, they've got a drain tile there, they've collapsed, they've filled up, they're not going to work, so don't expect that. Okay, on the repairs, the I-beam braces, this is a 4-inch I-beam here. There's 2 ways to put them in up top. Some people use metal, some people use wood. I, as an engineer, accept both. Over a period of 30-some years, I've seen the metal fail maybe 8 or 10 times. I've seen the wood fail 5 or 6 times. And it's all, if they're put in right, either one will work. So you can do either way on that. And so, there. There's the wood. I have no problem with that. This is the other kind of brace that people use. It's called a dead man brace for a lateral movement of the wall in. If you see these on the wall, somebody has come out, dug outside the house, supposedly, put a giant concrete block out there, run a steel rod through the house that's threaded, put this plate on it, and screwed it in. That's supposed to hold the house in place. I have seen these fail over and over and over. And there are foundation companies out there that are still putting these in that will provide you a lifetime guarantee on it. And if you go with the I-beam braces, they'll tell you they won't give you any guarantee at all because they're only $300 versus $1,000 and some dollars for these. These will not work unless you maintain them every month. And I have never seen a person that maintained them one time. I've asked them, what do you do? I don't know. And they just will continue to move. So.
Well, what keeps that steel rod from decomposing in the soil outside?
Well, it'll decompose. The soil shrinks up with dry weather. There's nothing holding the concrete in place anymore. It moves with the next pressure. There's just all kinds of reasons I've seen these fail. And as an engineer, when I come in and inspect it, I can see the steel I-beams. All I can see is this plate. So all I can tell you is, yeah, there's a plate on the wall. So we're pretty much stuck with that.
As an investor,
Huh?
what kind of alarm should that, if I see a brace like that?
If you see a brace like that, you know it's had the movement. Supposedly it has been braced. You would be able to sell the house. Unless, when you see these, the one thing you want to go look, when this happened, there were cracks that were patched. Go see if they've re-cracked. If they're re-cracked, it's still moving. This one I just showed because somebody had put in the steel supports at the top of the I-beams. They failed. Somebody come back in and put wood to secure it. So. Is that it? That was it. What I would like to do then is just take some time and go back to any pictures you got any questions on. Try and answer some questions for you because I know everybody, this is the part last time where we got most information.
Keeping the foundation wall, the outside moist, is that the only way to overcome settling?
Well, without doing an actual pier, you can pier it and bring it up, of course. Once you piered it, it doesn't matter if you water or not. It will not move anymore. But that's...
Neighbor had his pier 3 times, and it's still,
Who did the pier?
at least one time, Beaver.
Yeah. Those are not really what I call piers. Beaver does the concrete spread footings, and those will, the same conditions, those will continue to settle.
What's piering?
carrying, okay, when your house, if a corner of the house or a wall of the house is dropping down, you have to bring that back up, all the floors in the house, if the middle, this is the middle I-beam of the house here, one front and the back. If the back starts to settle, you get this. You'll walk into a lot of houses where you feel the floor sloping. They have to raise that back up. What they do is they go outside, they dig down to the footing, and they do that about every 4 to 6 feet. Then they drive steel down to bedrock or to refusal, attach a brace to the wall everywhere, and raise it all back up. That gets a little more expensive, but it's about anywhere now from $1,000 to $1,500 a year.
Have you noticed any difference in codes from town to town? We had a problem in Mission where we braced a wall that was up to standard codes in Overland Park or some of the other towns, and we had to redo it with more bracing, bigger. They made us go to the big, how big was the beams we put in? They wouldn't accept 4-inch beams. They made us go 8-inch beams.
Which town is that?
Mission, Kansas.
I do reports all over. The thing is there is no set standard in any book that tells you what size they have to be. If you've got an engineer's report, they should have to accept it. But each city also gets inspectors that think they're Barney Fife and they're going to do what they want to do. So there's nothing to do about it.
Yeah, situation in Lawrence, the wall pushed in.
Mhm.
The engineer threw out about 15 feet to cut a trench. When steel immersed in that
Concrete.
and bolts cranked that wall back out. Is there any other way to do that?
Yeah. And that's one of the advantages of the dead man is you can then, if you then dig against the wall too and dig out a 2-foot space, they use those to pull the wall back. The companies that put in the braces, they can also do that. They just put the braces up and then they have jacks that just push the wall back. So
What are they jacking against? The other wall?
the floor. The floor. So I see them do that all the time. They'll lift the house just 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch and then just push the wall back.
Against the soil.
No, they have to remove the soil, and they have to remove it all the way to the footing, or you can't get the wall pulled back.
Right.
So, but it is a cheaper way to do it, if you can find the companies to do that. Usually, to have them dig it out and push it back, from most of the things I've seen, is between, for a full-length wall in the house, about $4,000, maybe $5,000, if there's a lot of patio and air conditioners in the way.
So the 250 is just for putting in a brace?
250 is a brace, not pushing it back. No, 95% of the walls don't need pushed back.
So let's say you're buying a house and the basement's totally finished. Is there a way for you to go in and see if there's still movement, they've just covered it up, or?
That's what I said. I look on the outside. First thing I do, if I see that vertical crack, even if it's patched, I know that it's had movement. I go to the 2 sides, measure my offsets in the middle, know exactly how much it is. I can't tell you if they patched the cracks already or not, but I can tell you that there are cracks there.
The one reason I was asking, because our house, on the inside, there's cracks all over the basement wall, but you walk around the outside of our house and you don't see any cracks in the foundation. It's kind of weird, but they're all on the inside.
What kind of crack?
Well, we've had it fixed out here and all that, but one was diagonal.
When you get curing, the cracks in the basement outside, you may not see if they're up against the inside. Curing doesn't, or settlement doesn't cause as many cracks in the concrete itself as lateral does.
Well, what's your opinion of some of these main support columns just being founded on the concrete slab itself and not going down all the way?
They're not supposed to. Now, most of the time, if you see them on the slab on the newer houses, even if they put them on the slab, there's a concrete pier right underneath the slab at that point. I prefer them to be through the slab, of course. That controls the cracking, because like I said, that slab will move up and down. When it's got a column on it, that part doesn't move, so it just causes more cracking than if you were able to get it up. So it should always be through, but most of them aren't. Even in the new houses, they don't do it all the time, and they know better.
I had a house recently with a walkout basement. earth contact on the front, but none on the back, and the front was toppling in a little bit. Is a dead man the only option because there's no dirt to support the other side?
Dead man at that point becomes one, as a reason to be used, and maybe better off to do a dead man in that case if it's a real short house, like 22 feet. If it's, the long wall, 40-some feet, the weight of the house is enough. You don't have to do it, but there are times that you have to use a dead man like that. That would be one of the few situations.
Well, that kind of reminds me of the house we looked at, we ended up getting scared away from it. But the inspector suggested a dead man because of the crawl space, it wasn't a full basement. Is that what you would do for a crawl space? There really didn't seem to be room to get an I-beam down in there. But the foundation was kind of falling in a little bit on the inside.
They can do the I-beams, but they do have to dig deeper because there's not a concrete base, so they have to actually sink them about 3 feet down in and put them up against the wall. I can't imagine spending money on dead men on a crawl space wall when you could actually replace the wall cheaper than you could put dead men in. Anybody else?
When you have a crawl space block foundation, how bad does it have to be before you recommend replacing it?
It has to be pretty bad. The only thing that has to be worse is stone. Stone can just take one hell of a beating, and you just keep patching. Concrete block, unless it is offset enough that the house is going to continue to push the wall in no matter what you do, you can pretty much patch it up, brace it, and take care of it. So it can take, crawl spaces can take a lot more movement than a full foundation wall. And that's something we can always tell you when we're there.
How much movement should there be before you recommend digging out and pushing the wall back in?
Generally, once it is slid out from underneath the sill plate and you've got air flowing in. And so that's probably 3.5, 4 inches. And even at that, if it's a rental house, you can still brace it up and live with it. Just put stuff up there. On sales, a lot of the appraisers will make you push it back at that point. And it's better, but it can be supported and held up. I've seen them moved in 8 inches and supported. So. Okay.
When we look at a property, what's the best way to go about getting in touch with you as far as, hey, I'm looking at this house, and how soon can you get out here, and kind of how does that whole process work?
The situation here, I was going to get into that. I've left my cards back there. Been doing it 35 years. Unless you have my card or number, you're not going to find me, most likely. I've never advertised. I've just done word of mouth forever. So I stay as busy as I can be. So if you want me to come take a look at a property, you just give me a call. I generally can get out there by the next day. All of my calls seem to be emergency calls. Realtors selling the house, they're down to the last 2 days. The underwriter told them they have to have it. They got to have an engineer's report. Can you get here today? I say, well, I might. For sure I can get there tomorrow morning or something. So my schedule for today is usually really full. For tomorrow, it's mostly full. So if you call me, we'll get out there. If I have to come out at 7, 8 o'clock at night, I'm going to do whatever it takes to help you out. I know you all are in a situation where you're not even buying the house yet. You're just bidding on it. And if you're in that situation, for people in this organization, we'll come out and just do a verbal with you. Or if you can get us a combo, I'll go by you when you're not there, look at it, call you up, and give you a verbal. We charge $125 for that. And in that verbal, I would tell you, this is what's wrong, this is what needs to be done, this is what it's going to cost you. So you have a number that you can finish your bid on.
Okay. Say 1 1/4.
What's that?
1 1/4.
1 1/4. Now, my normal fee for a full, with the inspection with a full report is only $175. If you know you're going to buy the house, and if anything, before you ever get started, if you already bought it, you made your mind up, you're going to buy it, call me out before you do any work, because they're going to make you get one anymore at some point, if there's been any foundation work. That's one of the reasons I'm so busy. Anything's done, they call me out anymore. the underwriters just won't accept it. So before you do the work and happen to do the wrong work or do more work than you needed to, which is one of the biggest things that I see people do in houses, they buy one, well, I'm going to brace this wall, and this wall, and this wall. You didn't need to do that. You only need to brace this little section right here and try and make sure you don't overspend your money. But always call me. If you have questions and you don't need me to come out, feel free to call me. I'm driving most of the time. I put my phone on speaker. I'll sit there and talk to you. If you explain it to me or send me a picture, I can tell you without even coming by. Sometimes, hey, you're okay with that one, or no, you need me to come by and actually take a look at the whole house. I'm glad to work with anybody, anytime. The realtors do that to me all the time anymore. So they always just want to.
How much do you charge for the engineering report?
For a written report and everything, it's $175 for everything.
Could you speak a little bit just about like sealing up cracks? 'Cause I've had properties where we've had water leaking and we've had a seal, but it makes me wonder now, and I wonder if you've done enough.
Well, if you've got water and you seal a crack, unless you get rid of the water's going to find somewhere else to come in, or it's going to create new pressures and new cracks. It will definitely stop the low pressure, and if that's all you had was one rain that came up and you sealed the crack, if you don't have rain for another 10 years, you're not going to have any more leaking or excessive rains. Epoxy patching is the best way to seal the cracks. The epoxy injection works just fine. Most of the time, the people who are installing epoxy injection do not do it properly. And if you peel off that outside layer of epoxy, you'll find there's nothing in the crack. All they did was seal the outside. I prefer to see people who actually chisel the crack out and then put the epoxy in layers. But both will bond to the concrete, and it will not leak through that crack again. But if you've got water, you want to be doing other things, getting the sump pump, getting the grate away, getting the gutters clean. Do something to get rid of that excess
We had
water.
2 cracks, and one of them we had patched, and the other one started leaking.
So I'm saying, you patch the one up, now the water's just going to move over there to that point.
Just to reiterate what you said, Bob, about they need to inject that, chisel it out, and inject it in there. I just looked at a house in Independence where on every wall it had foundation issues, and somebody had taken the epoxy and smeared it on the outside, and there was still movement. And when I was walking through there and looking at that, I just peeled part of it off because it was,
Right.
I mean, it was stiff, and pulled off a chunk, but it wasn't installed right. So when you use a contractor, whoever you use, make sure that they really understand the process of doing a proper epoxy injection. We do that all the time, and it works fantastic.
Right. Done right is just fine. It's the greatest thing to do. Epoxy done wrong is just no better than a Band-Aid.
Do you offer specifications and details on what a contractor should do?
No, in writing, no, I do not. And the reason for that is that's design work. And if I do that, then I'm guaranteeing it instead of the contractor guaranteeing it. And you want to be able to go back onto that contractor if anything fails. I will tell you if he's doing it right or wrong. And you can tell him, hey, you need to make sure the engineer approves your work, and I'll be glad to do that. But I don't provide any specifications, just for it gives your contractor the ability to not worry about it. He's just going to do it. If it fails, he's not going to say anything. Good question.
I did. When you talked about explaining the epoxy process, if I was to ask the contractor, how does the epoxy process work? How should he or she answer me with the correct answer? What should that sound like?
Well, it depends on which way they do it. If they're doing the epoxy injection, they should tell you they're going to seal the outside, have the nozzles already pre-drilled, and that they're going to pump epoxy into the bottom one until it starts coming into the one above. And they're going to pump epoxy into that one until it starts coming into the one above. And they're going to continue to do that. And my biggest problem with that is you get a big crack, they seal the outside, they start pumping in that bottom one, and it's just going outside. It's going all the way through the walls outside, and that epoxy is $200 and some a gallon. So they pump a little while, and it doesn't come out, they just go ahead and move to the next one. And that's all they do, and you don't get the epoxy in there. But if it's coming out the one before, it's filled the crack. That's what they should tell you. But that's again, the guys, I like the guys who actually chisel it out, put in a layer, put in another layer, put in another layer, and then fill it and cover it. I know it's in there at that point.
So how wide do you have to chisel?
Depends on the size of the crack. You just want to get it to where you can get back in a couple inches. 2 inches of bonded area is all that you need with epoxy. Okay, so if you got a big enough crack, they really don't have to chisel hardly anything. They just start, filling it in. So I've seen some cracks that big. They're not too bad.
What are normal cracks that are done like right after a foundation's poured? Like I've been told that some cracks are just completely normal or
A lot of cracks in concrete are totally normal. The only ones that you're going to be worried about are the ones that are an angle like this, the horizontal ones in the concrete block, and a vertical one that's wider at the top than it is at the bottom. That's a settlement crack. Concrete will crack. Whenever it's poured, you have a bunch of water in the concrete. It absorbs that water, uses that water, hydrates. It shrinks, and the shrinkage alone will cause some cracks. If they used, especially if they used extra water when they poured the foundation, a lot of times you'll see concrete contractors add 5 or 10 gallons of water to the truck when it gets there. Makes it easier for them to pour, but it also makes concrete shrink more and get more cracks in it.
I wrote the belief that if they poured the basement in the winter, that concrete basement, that it's gonna not last as long as if they poured it in. Oh, come on, really?
Now, when they pour it in the winter and it's in freezing weather, they do have to use inhibitors to slow the process, or it will crack more. And a lot of guys don't do that. So it is better if they don't pour concrete under 40 degrees.
I've had a situation where water was coming up from underneath the house. There was in one of the downstairs bathrooms, just the drain pipe going into the foundation for the sink had just a little crack around there. It was so much that it flooded the entire basement.
Right.
What would cause water to
Anytime it rains, there's a water table existing in the ground. If you dig down deep enough out here right now, you'll eventually hit water. When it rains, that moves up. And sometimes, depending on where your house is, it's up around your house. And so water is under there trying to force its way up all the time. And then when it quits raining, it'll go back down. That's usually controlled with a sump pump. You put in the sump pump, and you have to put it 3 or 4 feet deep. The water won't come up above the bottom of that sump pump bed.
That's what we did, and that seemed to solve it. But I was wondering, because we also got a house that we didn't do this, but it was like that, where they had a trench on the inside of the house.
Right. That is, if you are ever going to finish a basement in a house that you're buying, you're wanting to buy the house, fix it up, finish the basement off, and it's had any water leakage at all, you definitely need to put in the sump pump and the drain tile system. That drain tile system, the same company that does the dead men that I don't like, has the best drain tile system in the city. And they put that in, when you pour back that concrete that you cut around the edge, you leave a little gap. They can also put liners on the wall. It doesn't matter how much water is there, it's going to get to that sump pump, and it's going to be pumped away before it touches any drywall, any carpet, anything. So it is the system that you definitely want to do if you want to finish the basement.
I didn't put that for that sump pump I was talking about. I just put a...
Right. If you have enough gravel under there, you don't need
That's
that.
what it was gravel.
Yeah. If you gravel, you won't need it. A lot of the houses, the gravel isn't under there, or it's been filled up over time, so then they have to put the drain tiles in. You want? Anytime you think of a question, just give me a call. Here's another one.
There is, one more question, they don't go in basement, because the water table is always very, very high.
Yeah. There's a lot of places where they don't have that. If the water table's high all the time. New Orleans, they couldn't do it because every house would pop out of the ground. Anywhere where there's a high water table, they can't put in basements. Any place where there's too much sand, they don't put in basements. There's too much shifting of the sand. Here, we can live with it, and if you maintain it, there'd be no problem. If everybody would build their houses 2 foot above the ground, slope it away, keep it moist when it's dry weather, there would not be a basement in this town with a problem. But nobody does that. They all
Renters don't like it.
Huh?
Road house, yes. Renters don't want to.
No, renters aren't going to do anything like that. So that's one of the biggest problems with settlement during the dry weather. If you have a house with settlement that you're renting out and we're having a dry period, you need to go put the soaker hoses and timers on it and tell the people you'll pay their water bill that month because it will save you $20,000. Okay, so again, anytime you think of a question, give me a call. I'm here for you guys. I like making money. Come out and do an inspection if you need one, but I like giving you the information if you don't. So.
I have a crazy question that everyone knows I'm crazy. Structurally, are water beds on houses, properties that are built within code, are water beds too heavy for the structure?
No. The house flooring is designed to handle 80 pounds per square foot.
Okay.
Okay, that would be 2 gallons of water per square foot. So your water bed would have to be this high to meet what it's going to take to make what the floor is designed for. But that's the whole floor. So your bed's only one small portion. So no, they're not a problem at all.
Okay, because I know used to, back in the 80s when we were talking about water beds all the time, they said they were not any heavier than a refrigerator. Is that still the norm with refrigerators coming? Have you heard that?
I haven't really thought about refrigerators that much. I don't know what it is. None of them are too heavy.
Okay.
They're made to hold a lot of weight.
Because I run up against that lately. I mean,
The problem was is that people put them in attics, which are usually designed for 40 pounds per square foot. The water bed can stress it too much there, cause it to sag.
Right, I just wanted clarity from expert. Thank you.
Any more bed questions?
Who all has a water bed?
I've actually seen somebody build a fireplace right on the floor without a foundation underneath it. That wouldn't be recommended, would it?
No, not at all. You definitely, anytime you do design change to the house, you need to make sure you're supported from underneath.
What about a sauna or a hot tub? If you're going to put it in where there's already a tub, like in a bathroom?
Yeah. Usually, if you're installing it, retrofitting it, you're going to need to support some extra stuff. You're going to need to put in extra support. It's built in, like the new homes, they've already built the support in. But you will need to beef that up underneath a full depth hot tub.
You didn't know I was going to say this, but I want to personally thank you. You've come out on several of our deals and always been quite responsive and interacted very well with my clients when I was operating as a realtor. I just want to say thank you because you move quick. No pun intended, but it's been excellent. But normally 2 days before we're in a contract and the inspection period starts, I'll call Bob and say, Bob, we're going to be in contract tomorrow. Can you be there the next day, day one of the inspection period? And he's always worked it out, but I've given as much lead time because I know some people are crazy short notice. But I just want to say thank you for what you have done. You come out on the pre-inspection and done the paperwork in a quick manner. We always get it that night. And then after the work's been done on the foundation, which, oh, by the way, we always have the seller pay for, then you come back out to verify the work's been done correctly. I just want to say thank you in front of everybody because I really have enjoyed working with you.
Well, thank you very much. We do try and get it out promptly. You'll usually have it by 8 the next morning, and the reason for that may sound like I'm really working on it because I'll forget about it if I don't. I'll forget the house when I look at 6-4 the next day, so I have to get it out the next day.
I'm a realtor, and it seems to me that it would be wise if there's a foundation issue, and I've got a listing, to have you come out and do an inspection report for the seller.
I do a lot of these now. I'm going around all of the people. It's if you're a realtor or you're wanting to sell a house that has any kind of problem, you're better off to get me out there first. I list it out. You get a bid. You know exactly what it's going to cost you to fix it because it is one time after another. Let's say you decided to sell a house you've had 6 years and you just put it on the market. You drop the price $5,000 and they agree to it. You're all happy and they get their inspector out there and he says, it's got foundation problems. I come in and find you got to do $3,000 worth of work. Well, you wouldn't have dropped the price $5,000 if you'd known that. The people selling the house need to know up front, and realtors are starting to do that more and more. I'm trying to go around and tell them those type of things. It's a lot better if the seller gets it done. signs of problems.
Have you ever had to, on a reinspection, had to call a concrete company out for the fact they didn't do a good job?
Yeah. Not, if you ask me when I'm there, depending on what the job is, I'll give you the name of up to maybe 5 companies that you can call that I know are going to do the work right. There are probably 250, maybe 300 foundation companies in Kansas City that I know of. There are probably less than 10 that I would use on my own house. That doesn't mean there aren't more out there. I just don't know them well enough. But I know the ones that I've seen over the years that do the work consistently, do the work good. So I will always help you. If you call me and say, hey, we're using this person, you know, that's what we want to do. Somebody mentioned Beaver Foundation. If you're wanting to do piering, I usually will. I don't recommend them for that. If you're doing concrete spread footing on a stone foundation downtown, they're the first company I'll tell you to call. They're better at that than anybody. You know, if you're wanting to do bracing, I'll never tell you to call dry basement. But if you're wanting to put in a drain tile system, they're best, and they will provide a guarantee that they stand behind for that. So that's good. You need piering, I can give you 2 or 3 companies. You need bracing, I can give you 2 or 3 companies that keep their prices down and do excellent work.
You have some cards here, you said?
I got cards back on the table back there. You know, take them, keep them with you. Just call me anytime you have a question. All right?